Let's talk about what happened back in late 2025. For 43 days, the U.S. government just stopped. It ground to a halt, setting a brand new record for the longest shutdown in American history. Now, this was way more than just a political squabble. It had these massive, cascading consequences that rippled through pretty much every part of the economy. So, how did we even get there? What was the real cost of all this? And maybe most importantly, what does it tell us about where things are headed? Let's break it all down.
To really get a feel for what this was like, you have to start with the people who are actually there. These words from Rusty Doggett, a tourist who was visiting D.C., they just perfectly capture that feeling on the ground. This wasn't some abstract headline on the news. No, this had a real, immediate, tangible impact on people, on businesses, and on the very image of the nation itself.
All right, so to really wrap our heads around what happened, we've got to start with the fundamentals. What exactly is a government shutdown, and what was the specific political fight that brought the whole system to a screeching halt?
At its very core, a shutdown is basically a failure to pay the bills. When Congress can't agree on a budget, a law called the Anti-Deficiency Act kicks in. You can think of it like a mandatory hard stop. It's designed to prevent the government from spending money that it just hasn't been authorized to spend. And we're not talking about a quick break here. This thing was a marathon. 43 days. That's over 6 weeks. It became the longest government shutdown in modern U.S. history, even longer than the previous record holder from back in 2018. So what was the big sticking point? Well, it really boiled down to a fundamental disagreement over healthcare. On one side, you had Democrats who wanted to extend tax credits from the Affordable Care Act. They were arguing this was absolutely essential to stop health insurance premiums from skyrocketing for millions of people. On the other side, Republicans. They framed these credits as a pandemic-era entitlement that, in their view, had served its purpose and needed to expire. Neither side would budge, and the government ran out of money.
Okay, so that's the political standoff. But what about the actual cost? Let's get into the economic price tag of putting the country on pause for 43 days.
This is the crucial question, isn't it? Because the damage goes so much deeper than just missed paychecks for government workers. We're talking about lost productivity, businesses getting disrupted, and just a general blow to confidence across the entire economy.
To get a credible, straight answer on this, we look to the Congressional Budget Office, or the CBO. Think of them as the independent, nonpartisan scorekeepers for Congress. It's their job to analyze the economic impact of these kinds of big policy decisions. And their estimate? It's pretty stark. The CBO calculated that this 43-day shutdown led to a permanent economic loss of $11 billion. Now let that sink in for a second. This isn't just money that gets spent later. This is economic activity. This is productivity. This is value that is just gone forever.
This chart here gives you a really clear picture of the economic whiplash this whole thing caused. You can see how in that last quarter of 2025, GDP growth got knocked down by 1.5 points. But then, look at the rebound in early 2026. All that pent-up activity caused growth to jump by 2.2 points. It just goes to show you, while a lot of the spending does eventually happen, the shutdown itself creates this massive, incredibly disruptive shock to the system.
But economics is only part of the story. Behind those billions of dollars are millions and millions of people. And the human cost? Well, it was immense.
The scale of the disruption was just staggering. We're talking about 1.4 million federal workers going without pay. The shutdown put food assistance for 42 million people at risk. It even hit travel. 40 major airports had to reduce flights because of staffing shortages. This was not some abstract problem in Washington. This was a real, genuine national crisis.
Sometimes the most telling economic signs are the most relatable ones. As Patrick Anderson put it, when beer drops, you know something's wrong. When people get nervous about the economy, they stop buying everyday things. And that's exactly what happened. During the shutdown, both beer sales and auto sales took a significant hit. It's just a powerful reminder that economic uncertainty affects everything we buy, from the big stuff to the small stuff. And this whole thing was definitely noticed far beyond America's borders. This sentiment from Melly Juritsma, a tourist from the Netherlands, really shows you how the political gridlock was seen from the outside. It just highlights the simple, universal wish for a government that, works.
All of this widespread uncertainty, it didn't just worry tourists. It sent actual shockwaves through global financial markets, and it put investors and major international institutions completely on edge.
So in the financial world, the shutdown's first victim was data. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, they actually had to delay their annual health check of the entire U.S. economy. Why? Because the government agencies that create the data, they were closed. In the markets, all this uncertainty just fueled crazy volatility. Gold, which is usually a safe haven investment, saw these wild price swings of over $100, all reacting to political news. The shutdown basically created a thick fog of unpredictability for everyone.
Now, it's absolutely critical to understand that this event wasn't some random one-off disaster. Instead, it was just the latest, and most severe, chapter in what's become a recurring crisis in American politics.
This timeline really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? Since the current budget process was put in place back in 1976, there have been 21 government shutdowns. What used to be this incredibly rare failure of governing has become a disturbingly common political tactic. And as you can see, they're getting longer and more damaging over time.
Because this keeps happening, other people are being forced to adapt. I mean, just take a look at the state of Maryland. Their Protect Our Federal Workers Act is basically a state-level safety net with things like emergency loans and special hiring programs. This is a huge signal that states are now starting to build their own defenses against the fallout from federal dysfunction.
And this brings us to the real long-term risk. As the Brookings Institution warns, this kind of constant instability isn't just about the dollar cost of one single event. Over time, it can trigger a fundamental loss of confidence in the U.S. economy's stability, both here at home and all around the world.
And that leaves us with this final critical question. As these shutdowns go from being a procedural screw-up to a recurring political weapon, what is the cumulative, long-term cost to the confidence that holds up the entire U.S. financial system? That right there is the billion or maybe even trillion-dollar question we're all facing now.